Yes, my name is Dick Bernard, and I was in the Army in 1962-63, which is considered Vietnam era, but it was before the action really began in Vietnam. And on the wall here, there's one name that I know. His name is Joseph Sommerhauser. I never knew him personally, but his brother was also a Marine in Vietnam, and I've had him as my barber for the last 30 years, so we talk every now and then about the significance of this action and so forth. The other significant thing for me is I've been to the wall in Washington, D.C., the big wall, and I happened to be there the weekend that it was dedicated in, I think it was October or November 1982. It was just by chance that I was there at the time the wall was dedicated in Washington, and I've been back there many times. This is always a moving event for me. I've been to this Veterans for Peace event since probably 2002 or 3, and I expect every year it gets larger and it gets more well organized, and I expect it to continue for a long time. I also have two brothers who are retired Air Force officers. They were both in Vietnam. They both survived. One of them lives in Utah. He was a pilot in the bombers, F-105 fighter jets, bombers. And the other brother was a navigator on the transport planes. And both of them were career men in the Air Force. Long family history in my family of military, and it's been a part of my life. And I'm anti-war. I'm a Vietnam vet. Lots of people are walking wounded from that and all wars, and we work to get rid of war. I guess that's about all I got to say.
Yeah, I'm Barry Reich, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. I served in Vietnam in 1969 and 70. And standing in front of the Minnesota Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This was actually dedicated in 1992, and there's been formal services here ever since 1994, you know, as a way of honoring the Minnesota casualties of the war in Vietnam. And so I come down here every year to remember that, and we gather as a group, Veterans for Peace, to honor those that have died, but also to try to talk about what we can do to eliminate further suffering. And we remember all the innocent victims and victims of war, the casualties that, you know, so often civilians nowadays that are caught in the crossfires of war. And there's a friend of mine right here. I went to high school with, Larry Paulson, and his brother shows up every year for this. And just this past year, he's got another Larry Paulson, his nephew, who took his own life. He served in the Afghanistan war. So we have suicides happening along with the wars that are going on.
Hi, my name is Bruce Berry, and I happen to be on this site right here in front of the state capitol related to something Veterans of Peace is involved with Memorial Day here. But I want to kind of answer to the question of what I feel is important from my heart of whether or not I feel whatever I feel about war and where it happens, and it's happening everywhere at this point in time. It's 2014, and it was in 1968 when I was in Vietnam and during the Tet Offensive. And I knew at that time, I didn't really even know why I was there, to be honest with you. I heard something about a domino theory, but when you're young, you're really impressionable. You just don't sort of get it. But I was drafted, so I was kind of like, I think I had to be there. My father, he was Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force, and so I grew up in kind of a strict environment of thinking that it would be important to protect your country if something were to happen, that need was present. Well, when you're young, you don't have any idea really what you're doing. If it was given another 5 or 10 years, I think I would have been way beyond that, and I probably would have said, I'm going to Canada or whatever. But when you're in what's called a war zone, sometimes it looks very much like this because things do calm down a little bit. I'm not saying it's like in a combat situation, Of course it doesn't. But people kind of exist around, and when I was in those situations, either if it was in a battle zone at the time through firefights or whatever, I was an MP, and I did a lot of patrols with the Vietnamese police and the Quân Cons, or the Consats, the Vietnamese police and the MPs. Anyway, we patrol the highways, and I would see remnants of what would happen over the evening, and people would be laying. We were supposed to open the highway up in the morning, and I would see. I wasn't even sure if they were VC or who they were, why they were planted there, but they were laying along the side of the road with bullet holes in them, and then the roadblocks would be occurring, and we would have to blow it up to open it up. And I wasn't too sure sometimes. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, the people who actually go and fight in these wars and get killed and kill civilians and the so-called enemy really probably don't understand what they're doing. But on the other hand, in today's world, in 2014 in Pakistan, the U.S. is at this moment in time killing several hundreds of non-enemy civilians with their drones, and why that happens in situations like this. If they just thought that somebody here could be an enemy, perhaps all of the people would be killed, and that can't exist anymore. We can't. It's not sustainable to be doing what we're doing.
Bonjour. Pongi etigo nilita ojibwe Ehtasham ningaga gwejitun chi ojibwe moyan. Jim Northrop nin indigenous cause aganashi mung. Chibnesi indigo ojibwe mung. Makwanin nindu dem. My clan is bear. Nagatu anang nin indun jabra. I'm from the Fond du Lac Reservation. Wabai Iganing and Da. I grew up hearing stories about we as warriors. In the Bear Clan, we are warriors. And so, my grandfather fought in World War I. My uncles fought in World War II. My dad didn't fight because he had tuberculosis, so he couldn't join the military. But he would have fought if he had a chance. My cousins fought in Korea, and when I graduated from high school, I joined the Marine Corps because it was just my turn. As I said, my brothers too. Two of my brothers joined the military, and I was the only one that was actually in combat. My brother was in combat very briefly, and he was evacuated from the battlefield. Another brother didn't go, but we were prepared because it is our role as Mukwa Indudem Bear Clan to fight wars. A long time ago, the Ojibwe and the Dakota used to fight, and now today, the Dakota live down in this part of Minnesota, and we live in the northern part. But my wife is Dakota, and so we bridged a gap there, a huge gap, by being married for 35 years. We've heard all the jokes and all of the reasons why we shouldn't be married, but we did it anyway. So, I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. And I went to Cuba in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I was an infantryman, and they told us where we would take the first row of landing craft going in, and our job was to take the first row of bunkers. And being a naive 18, 19-year-old kid, I said, well, sir, what do we do after we take the first row of bunkers? And it was kind of an embarrassed silence. And he said, you'll no longer be effective as a fighting force, which meant we would all have been wiped out. So I thought, whoa, will I be able to see 19 or 20 or 21? In 1965, the Marines landed in Vietnam, and still with this warrior ethos, I said, well, if I extend my enlistment for about 5 months, I'll be able to make a tour of duty in Vietnam. And so that's what happened. I extended my enlistment for a year, or 13 months altogether, and I went to Vietnam. I arrived and began serving with an infantry company, and we patrolled and set up ambushes, and we did sweeps, and it was a very relieved feeling I had when I saw a man shooting at me and he missed. And I didn't miss when I shot back. So it made me wonder if this is the right thing. Is this right for my children to do? And I had a change of heart after I came back from Vietnam. I didn't want my children to go. I wanted to break that chain that went back centuries. After seeing the horrors of war, I don't want to put my children through it, or my grandchildren, or any of my line that follows after me. So it's extremely important for me to stop the chain of warriors and shoot for peace, because peace means you get to sleep at night. You don't have to wake up with nightmares at 3:30 every morning, like I still do. Hello, my fellow human beings. Anin ni Anishinaabe Dug. Hello, my fellow Indians. Bangi Etagoni ni Tao Jibwem. Hidash Nengaka Kwetitun Gio Jibwe Moyan. I only know a little bit about Ojibwe, but I'll try speaking Ojibwe. Jim Northrop Neen Indigenous Laganashi Monk. My name in the English language is Jim Northrop. Chibanesi Indigo Ojibwe Monk. I'm called Chibanesi in Ojibwe. Kete Anishinaabe Ogichida Endao. I'm an old Ojibwe warrior. When I was a young man, real young, like 3 or 4, my grandmother used to take me to the parades in Duluth that signaled the end of World War II. And one of the members of the parade was this real old guy riding in the back of a convertible, surrounded by pretty women. He's just waving at the crowd. His name was Albert Wilson, and he was the last surviving member of the Grand Army of the Republic. He'd fought in the Civil War. And I knew I was looking at history when I was looking at him. Well, Albert died a few years back, so I want his job. I want to ride in the parade as the last surviving Vietnam veteran, surrounded by pretty women, waving at the crowd, and selling books. I'm honored to be here today. I understand there's been some controversy with Veterans for Peace, but I don't care about that. I'm here to talk to the veterans, share some of my poetry. First poem is called Ogichida. It means warriors. I was born in war, WW2. Listened as the old men told stories, getting gassed in the trenches, WW1. Saw my uncles come by from Guadalcanal, North Africa, the Battle of the Bulge. Memorized the war stories my cousins told of Korea, felt the fear in their voices. Finally it was my turn, my brothers too. Joined the Marines in time for the Cuban Missile Crisis. Heard the crack of rifles in the rice paddies south of Da Nang. Saw my friends die there, then tasted the bitterness of the only war America ever lost. My son is now a warrior. Will I listen to his stories or cry into his open grave? This is Time Wounds All Heals. We fought America's longest war. Baby killers, dope smokers, walking time bombs was how they remembered us. We gave our youth and were ignored for doing it. Shrapnel hurts. Nightmares are ravaging. But the wound that hurts the most is the indifference of those who stayed at home. It started with the wall, then welcome home parades 20 years after. Getting popular to be a Vietnam vet. Ronald Reagan praised us. Amnesty for the Canadian Americans, Jimmy Carter said. Platoon, China Beach, and tour duty are now around to tell our story. Getting popular to be a Vietnam vet. Too popular for me, I'm thinking of quitting. I liked it better when we were ignored. Going back to Vietnam is too scary for this straying grunt. Someone might remember me. America, where were you when we needed you? Graveyards and veterans hospitals are filled with your debris. I'm a veteran of America's longest war. Maybe. Some of these songs are life on the res and stories about my wife, so I won't read those. This is called The End of the Beginning. Someone said we begin to die the minute we're born. Death is a part of life. Who knows why the Creator thins his herd? Another old saying says, we must all be prepared to give up those we love or die first. Take time to mourn. Take time to remember. Everything happens in cycles. The pain you feel is once balanced by someone's joy when that baby was born. The loss you feel today will be replaced by good, long-lasting memories. Is there a message here? Yeah. Treat others like this is your last day above ground. This one is called Wannabe. I ran into one last week. I could tell he was a phony. He didn't have the eyes. Was he a door gunner or alert? Nope, he was a Green Beret, riverboat SEAL, Ranger, Recon Marine. I listened to his story. He talked about the jungles, the rice paddies, the firefights, the weapons. I listened. He talked about mosquitoes, snakes, gooks, and the NBA. I listened. I listened until I realized we'd both seen the same Vietnam War movie. Nice try, fucker. Don't steal my war. With his asshole puckered up tight, the Marine was walking light. He was hunting men who were hunting him. His rifle was in perfect order. He wasn't. Fear of not feeling fear. The heat, mud, and mosquitoes all addled his brain housing group as he walked and thought along. Thou shalt not kill. God must have stayed back in the real world. Is any of this real? Is this a green nightmare I'm going to wake up from? He sang to himself as his senses gathered evidence of his continued existence. His eyes saw, his ears heard, his heart felt a numb nothing. His mind analyzed it all as he studied the trail. He amused himself as he walked along. The old story about bullets. Ha! Don't sweat the one that's got your name on it. Worry about the one addressed to whom it may concern. On another level, his mind churned with rifle, M14, a gas-operated, magazine-fed, air-cooled, semi-automatic shoulder weapon. Weight, 12 pounds with 20 rounds. Sustained rate of fire, 30 rounds per minute. Effective range, 460 meters. Or hand grenade, M26, and so on and on and on. Movement, something's moving up there. Drop to the mud, rifle pointing at the unknown. Looks like two of them, hunting him. They have rifles, but he saw them first. The Marine Corps takes over. Breathe, relax, aim, slack, squeeze. The shooting is over in 5 seconds. The shakes are over in a half hour. The memories are over, never. This is called Wabigan. This is my brother's name. Did you ever hear a sound, smell something, taste something that brought you back to Vietnam instantly? Did you ever wonder when it would end? It ended for my brother. He died in the war. Didn't, excuse me, didn't fall down for 15 tortured years. His flashbacks are over. Another casualty, whose name will never be on the wall. Some can only find peace in death. The sound of his family crying hurt. The smell of the flowers didn't comfort us. The bitter taste in my mouth still sours me. How about a memorial for those who made it through the war but still died before their time? This poem is called Grandma's Hair. Did you ever hear a sound, smell something, taste something that brought you back to Vietnam instantly? Did you ever wonder when it would end? It ended for my brother. He died in the war, but didn't fall down for 15 tortured years. His flashbacks are over. Another casualty whose name will never be on the wall. Some can only find peace in death. The sound of his family crying hurt. The smell of the flowers didn't comfort us. The bitter taste in my mouth still sours me. How about a memorial for those who made it through the war, but still died before their time? I had to start over from when I lost my voice. Grandma's hair. It was really crazy at times. Once we got caught out in this big rice paddy, bad guys started shooting at us. I was close to the front of the formation, so I got inside the tree line quick. They couldn't see me anymore. When I leaned over to catch my breath, I heard the snick, snick, bang sound of someone firing a bolt-action rifle, shooting at the Marines still out in the rice paddy. I could tell where he was from the sound of his rifle. Snick, snick, bang. I fired a 3-round burst at the noise. That asshole turned and fired at me. I saw the muzzle flash, heard the bullet snap by. I fired another 3-round burst. I moved closer. Then, through a little opening in the brush, I could see what looked like a pile of rags, bloody rags. I went over and gave him one in the head to make sure. When my 7.62 bullet hit, it knocked his hat off. When his hat came off, all his hair comes spilling out. There was a woman. She had hair like my grandma's. This poem is called The Duke. The Duke. Hold up on that patrol, we got a chopper coming in. Good, no reason to stand, so we all sat down. The slapping sound of the rotor blades told us a landing was near. 2 gunships went over. Suspicious, looking for danger to the chopper they were escorting. It landed, they walked in our direction. Starched jungle utilities, spit-shine boots, shiny rank insignia told us these were rear echelon Marines. They surrounded a large green-clad man. "It's John fucking Wayne," one grunt said. The Duke centered himself in the circle of men, smiling, posing for pictures and signing autographs. He was enjoying himself until the Indian patrol leader invited him for a walk with the grunts. The Duke patted his ample belly and said, "I'll leave that to you professionals." John fucking Wayne, who killed Indians by the dozens with his movie 6-shooter, refused. The ranking officers looked at the disrespectful Marines. Court-martial and other punishments filtered through the rear echelon brains. The grunts looked back with, "What you gonna do? Cut my hair and send me to Vietnam?" "I'm already here, maybe for the rest of my life." The Duke looked troubled when he saw the killing etched in the eyes of the young grunts. More killing than he'd seen in a quarter-century of movie killing. He gave some excuse about lung cancer and was excused from the rest of the war. Derisive laughter lifted the chopper away from the young grunts. "What a pussy. Wouldn't even go on a little walk with us." My friend Ray Early says PTSD stands for Party Till Someone Dies. I had PTSD before it had a name. They just got the name in the 1980s, I believe. I had it long before that. So as part of my therapy is to write about it. This last poem is based on a real-life event. It's called Shrinking Away. Survived the war, but was having trouble surviving the peace. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. Scared to be without a gun. Nightmares, daymares, guilt and remorse. Wanted to stay drunk all the time. 1966, and the VA said Vietnam wasn't a war. They couldn't help, but did give me a copy of the Yellow Pages. Picked a shrink off the list. $50 an hour. I was making $125 a week. We spent 6 sessions establishing rapport. I heard about his military life, his homosexuality, his fights with his mother, and anything else he wanted to talk about. At this rate, we would have got to me in 1999. Gave up on that shrink. Couldn't afford him. Wasn't doing me any good. 6 weeks later, my shrink killed himself. Great. Not only guilt about the war, but new guilt about my dead shrink. If only I had a better job, I could have kept on seeing him. I thought we were making real progress. Maybe in another 6 sessions I could have helped him. I realized then, surviving the peace was up to me. Miigwech Bizendawieg. Thank you all for listening to me.
BFP, Veterans for Peace, honors all war dead. Originally called Decoration Day, Memorial Day is a commemoration of U.S. citizens who died while in military service. Originally acted after the American Civil War, it is a historical reminder of the virtues and values that our country has believed to be worth fighting for: equal rights, democracy, freedom. It is a day to mourn all who have died in war, a day to remember all the victims, the vast majority of whom are our brothers and sisters who, by accident of birth, were born on the receiving ends of bombs, drones, and occupations. Mourn them, mourn our comrades, mourn the dead and the wounded, the human beings who came back dehumanized because of what their government sent them to do. Mourn the suicides, mourn those who suffer at home without health insurance, homes, jobs, food, because of all the financial resources that we pour into war. As we mourn, let us also give pause and renew our commitment to end the killing and the suffering caused by war. I'd like to have Wayne Whitman come forward now and read our statement of purpose.
10 and the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans are honoring the veterans who have made sacrifices for our country. The way to honor our veterans is to bring all our troops and military contractors home and care for them when they are here. The way to honor our veterans is to provide the VA with the resources it needs and then hold management to account for performance in delivering first-class health care in a timely fashion. The way to honor our veterans is to stop using the military to impose U.S. hegemonic objectives on the rest of the world. The way to honor our veterans is to stop sending our troops to make the world safe for multinational corporations to maximize their profits so they can then ship U.S. jobs to countries under control of autocratic regimes that repress their own people. The way to honor our veterans is to invest in and rely on diplomacy, negotiation, economic development assistance, criminal investigatory methods, and aggressive prosecution, rather than the military to respond to conflicts with other countries or small groups or terrorists. The way to honor our veterans is to start now to demilitarize our foreign policy and wean our economy from its dependence on militarism and war, and begin a just transition to a sustainable militarized economy that creates good, stable jobs at living wages for all who want to work and reduces the threat of global warming. Thank you.
Having dutifully served our nation, do hereby affirm our greater responsibility to serve the cause of world peace. To this end, we will work with others toward increasing public awareness of the costs of war, to restrain our government from intervening overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations, to end the arms race and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons. D, to seek justice for veterans and victims of war. And E, to abolish war as an instrument of national policy. To achieve these goals, members of Veterans for Peace pledge to use nonviolent means and to maintain an organization that is both democratic and open, with the understanding that all members are trusted to act in the best interest of the group, for the larger purpose of world peace. We urge all persons who share our vision to join us. I want to take a moment to thank Barry for asking me to read this program this morning. And I just want to highlight a few points. It says, with others, as military veterans, we bring a unique quality to the peace movement. But we are not in competition with anybody. We're all striving for a world without war and a world at peace. We also strive to be democratic and respect each other and ourselves. As an organization, we have no secrets. We eagerly publish our meeting, proceedings, and financial report. The public does not know all the debate and discussion that goes on behind it, but they know the outcomes. And we urge all persons to share our vision to join us. Military veterans can add their voice to ours. A person can be a member and be an associate member. And please come to our local events and share your experience as a participant. We are saddened to hear about the Duluth DFP Chapter 80 and their peace float, which was denied participation in the local Memorial Day parade. Our experience in securing space for our events here at the Capitol could not be more cordial, helpful, and supportive. We want to thank the Capitol Plant Management Department for their kind assistance in helping us with our program. I want to thank all of you for coming out today.